Everyone, and happy Father's Day. For my Father's Day review, my friends voted for Finding Nemo. So, Marlin works a lot as a counterpart to Mrs. Brisby from The Secret of Nim because he's a small character. He isn't big or powerful like Mr. Incredible or Mufasa. He's just a small clownfish going through the big ocean to find his son. And that's great parenting. Sure, he makes some mistakes with the way that we'll get into, but overall, he's a great father, and I really feel this is the perfect movie to talk about for Father's Day. Now, this movie is one of Pixar's most popular. It had a bunch of 20-year-olds excited for its sequel in 2016, Finding Dory, which so many of us teared up at even though we were grown adults, and we still loved it, similarly to how other Pixar sequels have been coming out years and years later. But on to the original Finding Nemo. It's one of Pixar's most popular for a reason, and we're going to get into that. First, the animation to this movie is fantastic, as all Pixar movies are. Sure, animation might have improved since 2003 for CGI, but this still is a great movie to look at. The way the water looks, it's just so realistic, and the way it moves. Some of the more animalistic sea creatures like the jellyfish, barracuda, and anglerfish all look super realistic, and it contrasts really well with the more humanized main characters of Nemo, Marlin, and Dory, which really adds to the animation style because those characters are vibrant and colorful and cheerful, and then less light, well, either very light pink, looking close to white almost for jellyfish, or the darker colors of the other fish that are predatory really contrasts well with it, because it just seems like from a totally different world, making the predators seem that much more threatening to Nemo, Marlin, and Dory. Well, more Marlin and Dory. Nemo's technically away from all of that. But the important thing is, the animation for this film is one of the highlights, and it's some great animation that really holds up. So many great sequences are in this one, such as riding the sea turtles, crushing his surfer buddies through the East Australian current. Just the way they move so beautifully, like sea turtles do in real life, and how they just glide, and then with some beautiful background music. This is some of the best animation Pixar had for their early films, at least, and I think it still holds up and is one of their most beautiful movies. The story is a really heartwarming one, and it's not out to tell a big epic story, but there's still plenty of action to it. What really fuels the movie is Nemo and Marlin's relationship as son and father, and seeing how much they're willing to do to try to get back to each other, and seeing it done on both sides really makes it show how important the relationship is to one another. Now, they could have gone strictly with Marlin's side of this story because it's Finding Nemo, and gone with the idea that a big adventure, we don't know where Nemo's going, but then at the same time, Nemo wouldn't get to grow and learn to accept his father's protectiveness or become a stronger fish. And we wouldn't be able to see how much he cared in return for Marlin, which would make their relationship seem less special if we didn't see how much both parties really cared. So it's really organized well here. Now, this movie has a lot of obstacles for Marlin and Dory to get through, and I think that they all worked well for the movie's favor. Sometimes when a movie has too many obstacles that aren't interrelated, it can be really tedious. But as this film doesn't have a typical main antagonist, unless you count Darla, who is more bratty kid and is more associated with Nemo's side of the story than Marlin's at all. It was kind of necessary to do it that way, and it also establishes how far Marlin is willing to go for his son and his character development, and also his beginning trust of Dory and how the two become closer. So the story is a very nice, heartwarming one that's fueled by heart, but still has plenty of exciting scenes done throughout the movie to make it thrilling to watch and a real adventure. Some of the scenes are really intense, and it can be pretty exciting for young kids, maybe a bit too intense, particularly the scene when Bruce goes savage, but it's nothing most kids couldn't handle, which is the perfect mix of having high stakes without being excessively violent like some other animated films might be. Finally, we're moving on to the characters. Now, the animation for this movie is wonderful. Beautiful and gorgeous. Love it. The story is heartwarming and has some great sequences on both Marlin and Nemo's sides of the story. But what really sells this movie are the characters. All of them are so great. We're starting off with Dory. She could have easily been an annoying comic relief, the kind you get in a Blue Skies or Illumination movie that doesn't really need to be there, and it would be nice if they would just shut up or something. And in universe, she can somewhat be that, but out of universe, when we're watching the movie, we love her. It's hard to do a character that's meant to annoy other characters well. They have to be funny to us, but annoying to somebody that might be watching the movie. And that's exactly what's achieved through the character of Dory. She drives Marlin nuts, but at the same time she gives legitimate help to him throughout the story. And they grow to care for each other and trust. She winds up contributing quite a lot in the last third, maybe fourth of the adventure. So, yeah, we can definitely see why she's so popular and have to get her own movie. And, which I actually thought was nice how it was sort of and that was an allusion to something that she says here about her family. But I will get to that if I ever do wind up reviewing Finding Dory. But she's funny, clever, and one of Pixar's best characters in my opinion. But not the only great character in this movie by any means. Crush is another great one that I wish we had more time with, as well as the sharks. I've always loved Crush, especially since Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot and Disney World. I talked to him when I was a kid, like 9. He picked me like 3 times in the show by name. Yeah, it's great. If you have kids, go to it when you go to Epcot. You will not regret it at all. He isn't in the movie a lot, but similarly to how I said with Edna Mode in The Incredibles, he, as well as Bruce Anger and Chum, really make the most of these scenes that they're in. Crush in particular really connects with Marlon because he's a more easygoing parent compared to Marlon's more rigid and protective nature, having more confidence in Squirt than Marlon has in Nemo, which really helps him to grow. And he's 150, dude, and still young. The characters Nemo meets in the tank are also really fun. Some of them might seem rather one note, like Bubbles, Gurgle, Deb, and Jacques, but they all have their personalities that are charming and funny to watch, even if they have one joke each, like Deb with her sister Flo, or Jacques' obsession with cleaning, or Gurgle's germophobia, or Bubbles' bubble obsession. Bloat and Peach are some of the nicer characters in the tank, and usually the ones that Nemo turns to, especially Peach being the first to comfort Nemo, saying how his dad's probably in the pet store sympathetically. But all these characters just welcome him in, and of course there's Gil, the leader of the tank, and one of the most complex characters in the movie. Pixar characters are known for being a lot more complex than traditional Disney fair ones, and Gil really is a good example of this. He wants to be free and get back to his home in the ocean, but in doing so, he comes up with a rather selfish plan that nearly harms Nemo, and he feels terrible about this, but at the same time, it's him around the end that gets Nemo back to his dad and risks everything to save Nemo from Darla. So it's really easy to like him and see how he grows, similarly to how the three main leads grow. Then we have Nigel. He's a nice character, the pelican that has some good lines. Fish gotta swim, birds gotta eat. And Justin Alley, who, similarly to the sharks, seems to have foregone his typical instincts to become friends to these characters, and is a great help at getting them all together in the end. Now, on to our two main characters, Marlin and Nemo, since they're the ones that this whole review was for in the first place. Marlin is the way he is because of the terrible accident that happened with his mom and Nemo's mom. Sorry about that. His wife Coral, Nemo's mom, and his kids when they were killed by a barracuda, and as such he's more protective of Nemo and makes some mistakes, overprotecting, doesn't always listen, driving Nemo away, and Nemo does these horrible things, saying that he hates Marlin at one point, but once they're separated they realize how important they are to each other, and at the end we see how Marlin has a lot more faith in Nemo and is willing to let go a little bit while still being there for him. Plus, seeing him go from a terrified of all the ocean to being a father that's willing to go against sharks, whales, anything to get to Nemo. That's just so heartwarming, and seeing how Nemo really is upset at not knowing whether he'll see his dad again, and just seeing how excited he is when his dad returns, and that gives him the strength and courage to stop the filter. So seeing them inspire each other and grow together is a lot of the heart of this movie. And that's why I think Marlin's one of the strongest fathers in animated films. So, thanks again for this review to all my friends who suggested it, and thank you for watching. As always, leave an animated film you want me to suggest to review in the comment section below. And, as always, I have a question for today. What animated movie fathers do you think are some of the best? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again next time.